Hello, and welcome to the first lecture of this new section on leading humans with AI-informed decisions. In this course, Thinking, Deciding, and Leading with AI. And in this lecture, we will talk about, as a leader, how can you explain decisions in this AI era? So, how do you think you can explain decisions in the AI era? Any thoughts? You know, before that, let's stand and understand as a leader, where does leadership begin and why? You are a leader, right? And you need to communicate the AI decision to people. So, where does the leadership begin and why? Leadership doesn't end when a decision is made. In many ways, it begins there. Because a decision is merely a starting point or a catalyst for a more demanding phases of alignment, execution, and accountability with your team. You have a decision, but you need to implement it. And to implement, you need to align your team to your decision and then execute and be accountable for that. And in being accountable, you need to make sure that your team takes up the accountability. This post decision phase of leadership typically involves four critical responsibilities. What are they? First is to translate strategy into action. Once a choice is made, you as a leader must provide the roadmap, right? Without the clear implementation plan, the decision remains only theoretical exercise. Then you must build a buy-in because you want team to implement it. So decisions often will meet resistances many times. And leadership is involved in managing the emotional and cultural shifts required to ensure the team adopts the new decision as their own, not as imposed. And then you have to also navigate uncertainty. No decision is perfect. As a leader, you will be required to monitor outcome, pivot when necessary, and maintain team's morale if the initial results are not favorable. And finally, you have the responsibility of the whole decision. So, true leadership is defined by who owns the consequences. By standing behind a decision through its full life cycle, you as a leader can build trust and psychological safety within the organization. So that's where and how the decision leadership begins and why. In this case of communicating the AI assisted decisions. So let's be the devil's advocate and say, in spite of doing all that, if you simply say, hey, I want you to implement this because AI recommended this. Now, that is not an explanation, right? It is an abdication. Abdication of your responsibility because treating AI recommended this as a final justification will create a transparency gap with your team where the logic behind the decision remains a black box. For an explanation to be valid, you must, provide the interpretability, especially when you are taking decisions, making decisions with the help of AI. And you must allow the users to understand the specific data points or reasons that are used to reach the conclusion. Now, without this step, relying on AI outputs become an act of automated delegation rather than an informed decision making. True accountability requires that you as a human being, deploy these systems, can articulate the why behind the result rather than just the what. So as your team needs to understand the reason why behind that, and you need to explain that instead of just simply saying AI recommended this. If you say AI recommended, the results are not going to be alignment, execution, and for finally owning the accountability by your team. Right. So saying, AI recommended this is not a good option. So question is, if you have to make people trust your decisions, what would you do? So let's understand why people would trust your decision. People would not trust your decisions not because the decisions are intelligent. The decision may be most intelligent, but they would not be trusted until you make people understand them. The decisions must become understandable. People must understand the logic behind why a particular action is chosen to be worked on. So that's the key understanding that we need to have. So how can you make people understand your decisions? If that is the thing we need to work on, then how to make people understand your decisions? So you must always be able to answer questions in when you choose a decision that you are taking and you want to team work on this. Why this decision? Must always be able to answer, not only once. Please see the highlights of must always. You have to in all times. So the first question you must be able to answer is why this decision? What were the alternatives? Right? Why now? Why can't we do it some other time? And what were the trade-offs? What were the other options and why did we choose this decision? If we are going with this decision, what are the gains and what could be some pains that might come versus some other options that we have? So once that analysis and the sharing is done, people will start understanding your decisions better. And what you can do is you can still continue to take AI's help in refining the language and structure. But the meaning of the decision must come from you. As a leader, you have to bring the meaning to the people from the work that is done, make it interpretable, make them understand why this decision, why now, and why is it better than other options. So that's how you can make people understand your decision. So let's understand that, this kind of clarity of a decision, why this decision, why not something else, why now, that clarity will build trust with your team. They will start trusting you. They will know that if you're recommending something, you're asking them to do something, there is a good logic behind, and you will share with them now or later. If you don't, the opacity will destroy the trust that you built so far. And please remember, trust comes walking and goes back on a horse. So very quickly the trust can erode if you start becoming opaque. If you don't tell people the reason for your decisions, the data behind the decisions, the logic behind the decisions, and you start taking them and ask them to work, they will start the trust will start eroding slowly. So what is next? So in the next, we will look at how, as a leader, we can build that trust, transparency, and authority while working with AI. So let's take a look at how to build this trust, transparency, and authority while working with AI. So thank you so much for watching this lecture on leading humans with AI-informed decisions, the first lecture. I hope you're continuing to learn new things, continuing to enjoy, and I do look forward to see you again in the next lecture. Please feel free to message me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer your questions and do download the PDF file to take a look at anything that you need to.